Rise before this August House to report the outcomes of the 30th Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. This year's meeting of the COP was held in Belem in Brazil, in the heart of the Amazon. Despite the logistical challenges associated with the location, Fiji managed to put together a strong technical team that upheld and protected our position and priorities within the critical multilateral process. Madam Deputy Speaker, this year's parties were resolved to submit revised nationally determined contribution for the 2025 to 2035 period. In light of the current emissions trends and with average global warming now close to 1.5 degree limit, this round of NDCs is the most important for maintaining the potential to avoid the overshoot of temperatures. Furthermore, considering the recent advisory opinion handed down by the ICJ, COP30 was seen as an important watershed moment for reorientating global cooperation to address climate change around a clear understanding of state responsibility and shared obligations. Madam Deputy Speaker, Fiji successfully submitted the third NDC to the UNFCCC ahead of COP30. Despite our limited capacity and circumstances, we met our obligation and presented a holistic NDC that reflects our need and context. Unfortunately, to date, only 100 parties have submitted revised NDCs, endangering the 1.5 degree temperature guardrail. With this knowledge, small island developing states arrived in Belem with clear demands. We demanded an agenda item to discuss a global NDC response plan in line with major shortfall in national commitments. However, we were not the only group to arrive in Belem with frustration and expectation. Other groups demanded agenda items related to finance, unilateral trade measures, and other issues that continue to compromise and challenge national action and ambition. Overall, despite the high ambition of the Brazilian presidency, the COP proceedings were heavily influenced by tense and fractured state of current geopolitics. Madam Deputy Speaker, we face many operational challenges in Belem, not only including accommodations, protests, extreme weather, flooding at the venue, and even fire that resulted in a day of lost negotiations. However, despite these challenges and geopolitical realities, we emerge with outcomes that represent the progress we can be proud of. Madam Deputy Speaker, aside from the specific agenda items being negotiated at the COP, the Brazilian presidency pushed to land a negotiated cover decision to be part of the overall package. This package aimed to consolidate the various agenda proposals previously mentioned and was informed by many days of high-level discussion between the heads of delegations and chief negotiators across various negotiating groups. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Motirao is a word in Portuguese which translates to joint effort. In the effort to agree with the Motirao decision text, negotiations continued until the last official day of COP30 and into an additional day. The world remained deeply divided, with our 80 parties pushing against references in the text, transitioning away from fossil fuel. Despite this language being agreed at the COP28, at one stage it seemed to be possible that COP30 would conclude without any agreed outcome at all. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is no exaggeration to say that Fiji's delegation played a highly influential role at COP30. This is not just my perspective as head of delegation. This is supported by negotiation records in international media, including the Earth Negotiation Bulletin. I particularly wish to recognize the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Sivandra Michael, who was appointed by the IOC's chair team as one of the three negotiators mandated to engage directly with the COP presidency on behalf of the 39 island developing states. Dr. Michael remained in the presidency negotiations for more than 20 hours straight and then continued through the night as the COP ran into 27 hours overtime. They defended the IOC's position during the most contentious phase of the multi-round negotiations. His efforts, especially on the final text, helped secure commitment by developed countries to triple adaptation finance by 2030, ensured strong language urging increased adaptation finance pathway to developing countries. While explicit references to fossil fuel was not agreeable to many parties, the final decision reflects IOC's push to address the NDC ambition gap to protect the 1.5 degrees temperature limit, including through the launch of the Global Implementation Accelerator and the Belem mission for 1.5 degrees Celsius. These achievements were secured under the extraordinary pressure, and the Permanent Secretary's leadership in that negotiation room was central to ensuring Fiji and the PCs achieve the best possible outcome. Madam Deputy Speaker, another key result for Fiji was under the agenda item of just transition, which focuses on ensuring that mitigation and adaptation transition protect human rights and reduce harm. Fiji leads and coordinates just transition negotiation for the IOCs as well as PCs. I congratulate the negotiators for securing the first decision on this agenda item since the Just Transition Work Programme was adopted in Dubai on COP28. The decision includes key IOC's asks, including a dedicated reference to 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature goal, recognition of special circumstances for seeds, and the LDCs, and linking just transition to loss and damage outcomes. Furthermore, the decision mandates the development of a mechanism to operationalize the work program, shifting it from dialogue to implementation, which is something we have been pushing for since Fiji's COP presidency. Madam Deputy Speaker, on loss and damage negotiation, Fiji served as a coordinator for Pacific Small Island Developing States. At COP30, after over 2 years of failed negotiations, parties finally took a decision finalizing the third review of the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage. While the previous review delivered the San Diego network to strengthen national capacity, this third review has now secured a mandate to produce a regular global report on loss and damage, which further embeds loss and damage as a central policy pillar under the UNFCCC. Madam Deputy Speaker, Fiji also co-chaired negotiation tasked with developing guidance of the new fund for responding to loss and damage, which delivered the first decision agreed during COP30 process. This hard-won decision links the fund to the new collective climate finance goal agreed in COP29, ensuring that this fund will further resourced by developed countries. Madam Deputy Speaker, on the first day of the COP30, the fund successfully launched its first call for funding request, with proposals ranging from US $5 million and USD $20 million. Again, this decision was significantly influenced by Fiji, as we are one of the two IOC's representatives to the Loss and Damage Board, where decisions were made at the last board meeting on the co-design of this funding call. Madam Deputy Speaker, IOC's champion for oceans, Fiji, as IOC's champion for oceans, Fiji advocated strongly for integrating oceans issue into climate policy. The Mosese decision explicitly recognizes the interlinked global crisis for climate change, biodiversity loss, and the ocean degradation. This grounding advances the ocean climate agenda and strengthens call for greater investment in ocean resilience. Madam Deputy Speaker, Time is not on our side to reflect on every outcome we achieved. However, in addition to those already mentioned, we secured an outcome on technology and capacity building, global goal and on adaptation, and gender action plan, to name a few. A full report on the outcomes will be published in January 2026, and as we have promised before we left, it will be made public and available following Cabinet endorsement. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to turn to one of the persistent challenges we continue to face at every COP negotiations. That is the question, who pays and who is eligible to receive finance? Article 9.1 of the Paris Agreement calls upon developed country parties to provide financial resources to support mitigation and adaptation of developing countries. However, many developing countries feel this commitment is not sufficiently realized. At COP30, we collectively agreed that this must be clarified through work program. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I wish to update Parliament on COP31 hosting arrangement. As widely reported by the media, Australia was not able to secure hosting rights due to the long-standing impasse with Turkey. I commend the Government of Australia, particularly Minister, the Honourable Chris Bowen, for brokering an arrangement that prioritizes cooperation and collaboration and upholds the ethics of multilateralism. While Turkey will host COP31 and take on the COP presidency, Australia will preside over negotiation. Australia and Turkey have jointly agreed that the pre-COP be held by a Pacific Island nation, and we aspire to link the pre-COP with the global pledging event of the Pacific Resilient Facility. Madam Deputy Speaker, in the margins of COP30, Pacific ministers met with Minister Chris Bowen to discuss these new arrangements. During this meeting, Fiji expressed interest to host the pre-COP, and Tuvalu had expressed interest to have a component of the pre-COP hosted there. The Secretariat, made up of PIFs, SPRAP, and Australia, have been asked to host another ministerial meeting in the coming months to discuss pre-COP hosting arrangements. Our PIFs leaders have tasked climate change ministers to work with the Secretariat to finalize pre-COP hosting arrangements, and we must respect the trust placed in us and the process for agreement. Madam Deputy Speaker, the decision of pre-COP to be held in the Pacific and Australia presiding over negotiations ensure the Pacific can influence in shaping of the COP31 at the highest level. While the deal may not be satisfactory to everyone, it is balanced and still provides an opportunity for PCH to highlight the realities of climate change. Madam Deputy Speaker, before I offer my concluding statements, I would like to respond to the remarks by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, who suggested that key technical personnel were not part of Fiji's delegation to COP30. The facts I have just presented clearly reflects otherwise. Fiji took highly competent, experienced, and strategically selected team. A team that delivered results at the highest level of negotiation process. Even without the IPCC focal point, we had officers who are chosen by the IPCC to be contributing or lead authors to the next cycle of the IPCC reports. These were the caliber of people in our delegation that directly engaged in technical work and negotiations. Furthermore, some officers who did not travel had prioritized staying in Fiji to advance other national responsibility. It would be the outcomes Fiji secured at COP30 and the significant role of UNESCO played speak for themselves. Madam Deputy Speaker, I wish to address the narratives of some of the members of the public that continue to question why Fiji sends a large number of people to climate COPs, or why do we even need to participate in these multilateral processes. Let me be very clear. Fiji does not attend these meetings as spectators. We attend to defend our economic interests, our people, and our sovereignty. As parties to the Convention, it is our obligation to attend and contribute to this multilateral process. COP is where the rules, the finance, the safeguards, and global climate obligations that directly affect our nation are negotiated. Our development partners understand this, which is why they provide substantive financial support to enable our participation. We agree that the challenges at home require urgent attention, but it is equally important for our citizens to understand that many of these challenges will continue to worsen if the world's major emitters and global polluters continue to operate as usual. Without global cooperation on climate finance, adaptation, emission reduction, and protection of the 1.5-degree limit, Fiji will face escalating costs, greater climate impacts, and deeper vulnerabilities. No matter how hard we work domestically, we also will not benefit from any climate funds operating under UNFCCC if we are not a party to the Convention. If Fiji is not in the room, decision will be made about us or without us. Negotiations determine the level of finance available for adaptation, rule of governing loss and damage support, and the recognition of special circumstances for seed. Each of these direct implications to our villages, coastal communities, our infrastructure, our insurance costs, and even our long-term statehood. This is why we send a team that is technically strong, present across multilateral negotiation streams, and capable of shaping outcomes because of the consequences of silence or absence are far greater than the cost of participation. A good example is the Community Climate Adaptation Facility, or CCAF. At COP29, we agreed on with the Global Center for Climate Mobility to the design and funding call for community directly. The team returned from COP and worked throughout the first half of the year to get the design document finalized and advertised. Fiji was the first country to roll out CCAF project. In August, 3 communities were selected from the 11 that applied, and the funders have agreed for these funds to go directly to the community to support their projects. We agreed from the onset that the funds will go directly to the communities, and we negotiate on the terms and conditions. Next week, Maduatewai will be receiving its first payout of the $100,000 USD secured. My team is now finalizing the contractual agreement for Narata Village in Nanronga and Vunion Rohu in Naitasiri. To add, my permanent secretary has been working with the GCCM team on a proposal on a green climate fund to expand this initiative so that other communities can also benefit. The truth is that we need bankable projects, and communities will be supported to develop bankable project proposals. So, to members of the public who continue to disregard these realities, this is exactly why being at the table is not an optional for a vulnerable nation like ours. It is essential. Madam Deputy Speaker, to close, I would once again like to reiterate that I am very proud to report on the yet another COP in which Fiji's delegation's outstanding commitment and performance influence global outcomes. At every turn, our negotiators came forward with proposals and solutions, and our positions were recognized in the final hours, when the process involving 50,000 people is reduced to a room of fewer than 50 delegates. Our delegates played many roles in the process. Our views were always sought. Our voice was often recognized as representative not only of our nation, but our small developing states in general. Madam Deputy Speaker, engaging in events at this level is similar to a military exercise. Our teams deploy to various fronts and engage in multitude of battles. This year, we have emerged with the shared understanding that we fought well, did our best we could, and achieved our outcome that at various stages seemed impossible. While we urgently need and expect more from these negotiations, we continue to move forward with both hope and ambitions. And I thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much for your update, Honourable Bulitavu, Minister for Environment and Climate Change.